good morning. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Well.
And Mheshimiwa Robert Basil, watu wa Yatta wako aje?
Wako sawa, lakini pesa hakuna.
Pesa onge. I know what you're trying to talk about.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to be given something to take home to your constituents. I mean,
that's a good question. By now we should be having all the monies, because considering we have 4 months to the end of the financial year, and currently we have not received any penny for development. The only money we received was a quarter of the bursary funds. So it's a very unfortunate scenario, looking that we have been able to pass 2 budgets, the first budget and then the supplementary budget. So it's a worrying situation, and we want to know what's going on. Yes.
I'll have to interrogate that further. I'm reminded to tell you that after this function, we are all going for the conference. So don't worry. We all know the men's conference upcoming. So, Mheshimiwa Basil, come with me.
So, no problem.
All right. Okay. On the front page of the People Daily here, front page of the People Daily says that congestion headache in top schools. That is what we have, congestion headache in top schools. And yes, institutions forced to use offices, laboratories, and tents as classrooms after a high number of students report to Form 1 in campaign to meet 100% transition target by the Ministry of Education. That is what is now happening here. Headache as top schools. There is no space for schools. Congestion, headache in top schools. That is what we have. And something to note is also on the front page of the daily, of the People Daily. World Mons Marathon champion Kelvin Kiptum, runner and his coach killed in night accident on their way to training camp. That is what you have here. The wreckage of his motor vehicle, which was involved in an accident, also making on the splash of the People Daily. This is what you have. Yes, this is what it is. And gentlemen, I think in the spirit of patriotism, I'll give a minute each, starting with you, Gibson. At the age of 24, and we all know what really happened. The Cabinet Secretary and other top officials were yesterday at his home to condole with him. Maybe a second.
Thank you, Victor. I mean, the story of Kiptum is one which is really worrying, because he was a very promising young man. And we indeed had a lot of expectations. Even himself, I think through the interviews, you could see people say that he had a personal commitment that he wanted to really make it to under 2 hours in the next race in Rotterdam. That is an expectation which has been taken away from Kenyans, from the family. I think I saw the father really very emotional, and the wife. So we really want to say that we wish the family well in these very difficult times. And we ask that, I mean, the issues with road safety, things which have taken. I think over the last 15 years, somebody was doing an analysis. We have lost world champions who are Kenyans through road accidents. So it's something we also need to maybe either they need to be done sensitization that when they are on the road, they are not actually running. It's the vehicle running. But sometimes things do happen. We are not saying that it was carelessness on his part. Let's leave the investigations to bring that out. But we want to say that we have lost a hero, somebody who had we had great expectations in.
All right, Mheshimiwa, in your capacity as a Kenyan, of course, as a parliamentarian, you present Kenyans and you represent him as well.
Yeah, first is to condole with the family and the people of KEO South. It's very unfortunate to lose such a young soul. He was a rising star. And as Kenyans, we have lost a very promising young man, particularly in the field of athletics. The young family, the dreams, the aspirations as a family has also been cut short temporarily, and very unfortunate. So I pray for the Lord to actually give the family the fortitude to be able to bear with the loss, and also request the CS for roads to really do something to mitigate this level of accidents, because if you look at statistics in Kenya, we have lost so many souls through road accidents. Something needs to be done to mitigate the road related accidents. And as Member of Parliament, I think we also have a duty to come up with the proper legislations. Because if you look at other countries, particularly the progressive economies, we don't witness such level of accidents. And if you look at our roads, we do have bumps, which if you go to many countries in the world, there are no bumps. So we need to ask ourselves, what's going on? Do we need to sensitize our people on how to use roads or how to respect the road-related or traffic-related laws? So there's a lot to be done, and this is a awakening call for all Kenyans to be able to know that we don't want to hear similar cases of losing lives in the near future.
All right, thank you. You said you've not been given money, CDF, and the top cover on the People Daily, congestion headache in top schools. How did you maneuver during your recess? You didn't have enough bursary, so to speak. Is that what you're trying to say, Mheshimiwa?
Yeah, you know, out of the money we requested,
yes.
For example, if I take in my constituency, I requested about 61 million for bursaries.
Yes.
And what I received was only 30 million, whereby 10 million is supposed to go for administration related cost. 20 million is what I'm left with for bursaries. And if you remember very well, after the Punitive Taxation Act was passed in Parliament, the cost of living has gone up, and actually poverty level has also tripled. So the needy cases have grown up. We are initially, like the previous years, the numbers we were receiving for needy cases has tripled. So if you have such a case, and here you have received nothing almost, because the 20 million compared to 61 that I've already requested, it tells you it is almost impossible to know who to allocate. Because if you talk of the most needy, based on the vulnerability indicators, you find they are more than the money we have received. If you look at development, I've not received any penny for development. And that applies to all members of Parliament. So this is to tell you we are in a very worrying situation as a country, considering we have passed two budgets. The initial budget, another supplementary budget, and we have 4 months to the end of the financial year, 2023, 2024. And if you ask Kenyans, the taxes that is being imposed on them is so much. And the country is collecting more than has ever been done before. So I don't think they have any proper excuse to explain to Kenyans where the money has gone. Because we are talking of repaying debts. Yes, debts is not the first time we are incurring debts. From the time of President Kibaki to now, Kenya has been borrowing. But we have never witnessed a situation whereby taxation or taxes have been increased, revenue collection has gone up, but the money is not seen. So we need to get answers to the questions we have. And I think this will top the discussion today in the afternoon in Parliament, where we want the government to explain to us what has happened, where is the money, because the poor, as we speak today, most of their kids are at home. When they reach, their kids are at school. So we don't want this level of inequality to continue. Remember,
do you have such a situation in your
yes,
constituency?
because, I mean, I'm telling you, if you go to the constituency, in addition to the school fees, many parents are not even able to sufficiently prepare their kids to go to school. I mean, in terms of buying books, in terms of buying uniforms, in terms of buying whatever is required for a child to go and report to school. The poor are not able to. Because if you talk of cost of shoe last year and the cost of shoe today, the shoe has tripled. The cost of uniform last year and the cost of uniform today, the price has gone up. Majority of the poor, their income has shrunk. So you ask yourself, now with this situation, here you have a situation where the parents cannot afford to prepare their child to report to school, at the same time paying school fees. Most of the schools, they also complain of capitation. The money coming from government has not been remitted to their accounts. So even if you try to negotiate with the end teachers or the principals in schools, they tell you, yes, Mheshimiwa, I hear you, but what do I do with these students? I can't afford their food because they need to have meals for them to be able to attend school. I can't be able to pay BOM because most of my schools, you find they are BOM teachers, meaning the parents have to go to their pocket, be able to pay for the teachers. Right. So there is a lot, and it's in chaos. It's a chaos. It's a chaotic situation.
All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, I still want to talk about that. You are resuming today in Parliament after 2 months recess. We just want to take a look at what is happening and what's in the in tray for Parliament and the Senate as well? What are some of the bills? What are some of the discussion that is going to be happening there and the debate and that we should be expecting in Parliament and in the Senate as they resume after recess? Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Now, let's continue taking a look at what we have here. On the front page of the Standard here, Legends' Last Promises. This is what we have, Legends' Last Promise. That is a marathon record holder, spoke to the two people so dear to his heart, his father and his wife. He made them a promise that may just be that. To his wife, he vowed to be the first human to run a marathon under 2 hours. To his father, he had bought land and pledged to build a church. Sunday night, the legendary athlete bowed out after being involved in a tragic road accident. That is what you have here, and the story continues on the inner pages of the Standard newspaper, already covered extensively in other local dailies here. This is the world record that he broke under 2 hours. That is 2 hours 35 seconds flat. That is Basil Kiptum clocked when he broke the marathon record in Chicago on October 8th, 2023. He had hoped to lower it further in Rotterdam on April 14th, but that was just that. We have already sent our message of condolence, and of course we have got several leaders who also sent their message of condolence to the fallen legend. May he rest in peace. Closing further, and of course that's just that. Kiptum's widow speaks after tragic accident. That is what is there. You can take a look at what we have there. Let me come back home and ask you, gentlemen, very quickly. Yes, let's head to the crossover to BBC. What we have: Palestinians sheltering in Rafah fear Israeli offensive. This is what we have. The UN has also warned that the Palestinian doctor in Rafah has said that people are terrified about the prospect of an Israeli ground offensive in Gaza's southernmost city after a night of some of the worst airstrikes that he has experienced since arriving there. The war continues. What about what you have on the front of France 24? Trump asks U.S. Supreme Court to delay election interference trial. This is what's happening in the state. Donald Trump on Monday asked the U.S. Supreme Court to put on hold a judicial decision rejecting his claim that he is immune from being prosecuted for trying to overturn his 2020 election loss, arguing that without such a shield, quote unquote, the presidency as we know it will cease to exist. He's also putting a spirited fight. Gibson?
I think you know Trump. Trump is a man who wants to thrive in chaos. When there are more chaos, he wants to stand out and be able to even bend the law to his favor.
Yes.
So, but the American people and the American court system has been very clear that if there's nobody who is above the law.
Yes.
And so far, so good. They have issued some decisions against him, which is trying to appeal. Therefore, the reason is asking the Supreme Court to hold off, because if they go ahead and give a decision against him, chances of him being on the ballot are fast fading. Yeah. So that's what he's trying to fight.
So it's not easy, even with the big boys out there.
Yeah. He's not happy.
All right. So let me come back here, Mheshimiwa. Today you are resuming after 2 months recess.
Yes.
There's just so much to be handled, the parliamentary entry. What should you expect? Do you have order paper?
Yes, we do have the order paper today. And of course, what has been brought to us is the bills that are pending. We have a number of bills. You know, after the court ruled against the housing levy, the bill is being drafted after the public participation, so we expect it in Parliament. We also have the outcome of the bipartisan discussion. The report is also part of what will be brought to Parliament. But very importantly, that goes across all constituencies, regardless of the political divide, is element of the NGCDCF, because currently, as I've indicated, we have not received what we expect to have received by now, considering we only have 4 months to the end of the financial year. So top of the list will be, where is that fund? Because it's critical that the poor the kids need to go to school. We need to offset the bills, particularly on bursary allocations, and at the same time development funds. So I don't think there is anything that should supersede the interests of Kenyans, because all the 50 million Kenyans would want to have the funds released, particularly to be able to pay for bursaries, at the same time to initiate development projects, which have already delayed, because by now we should be talking of commissioning, completion of projects, but now we haven't even started. So there is a lot that is waiting us, and we are curious for the afternoon to be able to debate and show Kenyans that we are there to represent their interest, not our interests.
It's legislators brace for epic housing bill showdown. Divided legislators set to debate on controversial affordable housing levy after court ruling against it. Now, it's a divided house, so to speak. It's a divided house. And Wakili, we have a court ruling. Other committees also held their, public participation across the country. But what are we looking at? The public participation or the debate in Parliament or the court ruling?
I think we are looking at both, because this particular situation of the housing bill, which was already an act, now we are back to the bill, is a confusing situation for Kenyans. But we have heard from even the horse's mouth that indeed, I think we discussed here, Victor, at the initial stages, that I remember mentioning that we had problems with this particular bill when it was still an earlier bill, not the second bill now. And I remember somebody telling me that, Achilles are here to bring confusion. But the confusion has been, you can see the kind of confusion we have gone through. Because my issue was, where was this being anchored? And that was still a challenge. The issue of the tenure, how the land was acquired, is also something even the AG has spoken about, and shed light that indeed that is not procedural. So if the AG himself has pronounced himself on such things, I think there is really no doubt that we have a problem. The only other issue we will want, because nobody's against the houses being built. I don't think Mheshimiwa here doesn't want to see decent houses in his county or in his constituency. The issue is, let everybody be involved. Let's know the clear framework of the law under which this is anchored, and let's prosper as Kenyans together, knowing that the decision has been made wholesomely by all Kenyans, where you can even ask a class 5 kid or a grade 5 nowadays, as they call it, be able to explain to you that, our country has a housing program, and when I grow up, I will need to get a house, and this is what I need to get it. So that is what we want, not things which, if you ask even the people who are actually pushing for them, they start telling you a lot of stories and speaking in tongues. So that is something I think we need to do, which is we need to do for ourselves, because the housing bill is not going to stop, or the housing issue is not going to stop with this government. It's going to be for future governments. And if it has to be sustainable, we need to anchor it in law in a very clear way, so that somebody can be able to follow through. We know it's something which is here with us, not something which we are not sure how it actually operates.
So what are we looking at here, Mheshimiwa? Because at the end of the day, the court said it's unconstitutional. The president said that it has to continue. So what will take center stage? Where will you get the money to continue the project? And yet the court said, the housing levy is unconstitutional, and Wakili is here to help us probably to get more details about that. So what are we looking at in Parliament? How are you going to debate this bill? The public participation bit of it took place. Where is he going to get the money? How are you going to handle this?
First, and I made it very clear in my previous interviews. One, the issue of housing should not be spearheaded by the government. When it comes to affordable housing, the people who are supposed to do housings should be the private sectors, the SACCOs. Those are the institutions that should be constructing houses. If you talk of affordable housing, instead of imposing a levy on to people who necessarily do not need a house, or who already have a house, because imagine you have a mortgage and someone now is already imposing a levy on you and you're already paying for a mortgage, then which becomes a paradox. What we indicated is, if indeed government wants people to have affordable housing, they need to zero rate on cost of construction materials. And people will be able to build their houses the way they want at a low cost. Because once you remove taxes on materials for construction, then you can make everyone be able to afford to build a house. Today, if you look at what has been happening, here you are being taxed a levy, or you are being taxed money for a house which you don't know where the house will be. And then after the tax has been imposed on you, someone comes and sells the house to you at a tune of 2 million, 3 million. The hustler, how many hustlers can afford a house of 3 million? Again, the house is built on government land. So if you look at, you analyze and critically review the whole approach, then you tend to say there's something beyond what we see. And that is where the element of being a scam or the fraud comes in. So when the court said it's unconstitutional, we expected the government to honorably say we are going to refund the money we have collected from Kenyans. But instead of coming forward and refunding the money, the president declared and said he's going to continue. And you see, it's very unfortunate when all of us took oath of office, we said we are going to respect and uphold the Constitution. Yeah. And the Constitution says we need to respect the decision of courts. So we need to understand, as state officers, we have a duty to protect our Constitution. We have a duty to respect our courts. Because once we don't do that, we are setting a very bad precedent, which is likely to set our country back to where we have been coming from. Remember the revolution, the multi-party system, and so much. The democracy we are enjoying today is because of the struggle the previous leaders have gone through. So it's a moment as patriots to respect what the courts say and what our Constitution tells us. Now, when it comes to Parliament today, we'll be able to tell them. And if we talk of the housing bill, yes, if we make amendment, for example, we say construction materials should be zero rated. Yes. That will reflect and resonate very well with all Kenyans. Because every Kenyan would want to have a house, a good house. If you go to the rural areas, most people have houses. What varies is the standard of houses they have. If you go to the Nairobi, the slums, I would give a good example. The UN Habitat, some years back, started slum upgrading. They built multi-stories for the people in the slums. What happened? The people in the slums moved to there, but now the additional cost, the unforeseen cost of maintenance of the multi-story was unbearable to most of the slum dwellers. So they went back to their original informal settlement and actually leased the houses that was upgraded for them. So the whole program did not succeed. So if you now bring and start telling us now you have another approach of affordable housing, and you are targeting people across the country who have not even told you that's their priority, then you seem to be missing the target. And you seem to be...
Why not drop in NHC? Because we have NHC here, which is also responsible for such national housing.
Yes, and you see that is their duty. And I've said in many countries, if you look at any progressive economy, the element of building houses is not done by the government, but is done by SACCOs, is done by private sectors. These are the people who normally spearhead such an exercise. In our country, if the president means well about affordable housing, he needs to zero rate taxes on all construction materials. And I made it even clear when the bill was brought, the Finance Act of 2023. Right. My input to the bill was very clear. I said, if you really want affordable housing for Kenyans, remove taxes. Now look, do you know how much is now a cost of cement, a bag of cement? Initially it was at 600. Now it's 800 plus. Soon we'll be talking 1,000.
Yeah, because of the demand.
So if, no, the weakening shilling. And also with this approach of affordable housing, it has also created an artificial demand for dollar. What do I mean by this? Most of the items we use for construction, we're talking of the finishes, what we use in the toilets, etc. They are imported items. And once you create a demand for imported items, what that means is the demand for dollar goes up because people have to import. And you're importing in a foreign currency. Okay. And as a result, your shilling continuing to weaken. And is even weakening against our local currency, the neighboring currencies. Yes. I'm making reference to Tanzanian shilling. When Uhuru was leaving office, Kenyan shilling was exchanged at 22 with the Tanzanian shillings. Today it says 15. Uganda shillings would exchange at 35. Today it is 24. So if you look at the performance of our shillings against our local, our neighboring currencies, it is to tell you we are not doing well as a country. We are on the nosedive.
Right.
And any patriot who means well for the country should go to the drawing board and rescue the situation before it gets out of hand. Yeah.
Okay. Wakili, you can imagine both sides are now seated and Speaker Wetangula is on the throne, is on the seat there. What do you foresee? After 2 months, of course, we've been here for the last 2 months since they went home, recess, the political undertones, etc., and this, amongst others, including the NADCO report, which we're also going to discuss shortly, is here. So what do you think is now running through the minds of Speaker? I can imagine Mheshimiwa Basil is fully charged.
I can see as all his ducks in a row, ready to shoot.
Right.
And I like his spirit, really. I hope we have more members of parliament like him who can be able to speak clearly and who know and have a grasp of the issues which are ailing our country. Because sometimes I think a couple of members of parliament, even some of who have come on set, you listen to them, you wonder, how informed are these guys? And yet they have all the support, but I think Basil is way above them. So what I want to say is that for the House, really, we really need to see a proper debated House bill which we can be able to own as Kenyans, because that is the least we can expect from them. We don't expect again to start another litigation after the previous one. So we expect something which can be owned by all Kenyans so that we can be able to move ahead knowing that we are doing houses for our posterity and for our future generation. Because a house, if you buy it today, Victor, you are going to even hand it over to your great-grandkids. It's not something you buy and forget. Of course, you buy and forget, but then it lives on beyond you. So that is one, and that is what we demand from members of parliament and even the speakers as well, that they ensure that they be able to midwife a process which is going to be owned by Kenyans and is fully participatory to avoid another round of legal issues. The other issue is the NADCO report. Most importantly, the NADCO report, we will want to see the members discuss and give a way through for IBC, because we do have challenges with some constituencies not being represented and wards where people either have passed away or for one reason or the other, people are not in office. We want to see a fully constituted IBC, which is going to also be owned by all Kenyans, because that's another challenge where we might have problems with people running in and out of court because of the process not being fully participatory. So we urge the Speaker to ensure that he shepherds the House to produce a bill which is going to be beyond reproach. That is at least the least we expect of him, being a lawyer. The other issue is, of course, the IBC needs to come in and be able to redraw the boundaries. You've had people from Central say 1 man, 1 shilling. So we want to see that there is proper representation through demarcation of the constituencies to ensure that at least each Kenyan who gives taxes is able to be represented and receives his fair share in terms of development. And even those ones who also do not give taxes, who are in marginalized places, they're also able to get their equitable share, which is going to ensure that they are brought to the standards of what a Kenyan should be able to enjoy. So those are some of the things we expect. Of course, it's going to be heated. We expect the Speaker to be able to wear his crown of wisdom, to be able to shepherd and ensure that he midwives a situation whereby he doesn't get to lose the House. We have seen former situations where a House is lost and we end up having a mockery of a decision. We don't expect that to happen at this particular
Allow
incidence.
me to ask you this question, and this is to all of you gentlemen, because look at it this way: the Solomonic wisdom that we expect Wetangula to have, the Speaker, to to portray. The court ruling is here. Wakili will help me get that. The court ruling is here, and again, the NADCO report is also considered for an adoption in Parliament this afternoon. So how is it going to be? Kenyans went to the streets. There was a dialogue at Bomas of Kenya. The NADCO report came out. Consideration for adoption is also, in Parliament. and then, boom, we also have a court ruling. So what takes precedence? Let me start with you, Mheshimiwa.
Well, I think the ruling from the courts takes precedence. But of course, as a House bestowed with the responsibility to make legislation, we have our duty to make amendments. And it's important that Kenyans need to appreciate the role given by Parliament in our Constitution, where we have the duty to make laws, to make amendments. That is why we have Parliament. And when we go back to Parliament, we look at all those pending issues. The outcome of the bipartisan, the recommendation that came out of it, although it fell short of the pertinent issues of cost of living, the members were not able to agree on cost of living, which was one of the central items to the highs of many Kenyans. So we'll be able to deliberate on it and make enactments based on the proposal recommendations. When it comes to the IBC, of course it has given us what we call a quagmire, a situation where we have pending elections, we have border review that has to be done constitutionally before the end of March. Today, as we speak, we have weeks to March, and the IBC is not in place. We also need to make amendment on IBC, because having no commissioner doesn't mean IBC has collapsed. We have people who are on salary, who are being employed. We have the returning officers. These people should have an authority to oversee election, the by-election and others, even when the IBC is not, the commissioners are not in office. Because if you talk of members of parliament, you don't need commissioners for you to oversee election of members of parliament. That's the duty of returning officers. If it comes to the executive, for example, if we were in a crisis where the country required to have election for presidents, that's where you need commissioners. But we need to have separation within the IBC laws where returning officers can oversee elections. Particularly, we are talking of ward-related elections, the member of parliament elections. That should be done by ROs, and they are presiding officers, who I know most of the ROs are actually employed. They are getting salaries from the taxpayers. Again, when it comes to the IBC, what we witnessed in 2022 was shocking, where 4 commissioners disagreed with one person, and that person, who was the chair of the commission, went ahead and made a declaration on the results of the 2022 elections against his colleagues who are commissioners in the same platform. Now, if you hear now in any situation, majority should carry the day. But what we saw in 2022, I don't think any Kenyan want to have a situation where one person can make a decision when he's already disagreeing with the other commissioners. So we need to have a situation where we can have a balance. If we don't meet the minimum threshold in terms of agreement of the commissioners, then perhaps a decision should be taken by another authority where people can be able now to see that this is fair. But you see, if you have one person who has absolute powers to declare who is the winner of any political election, particularly presidential, then that is very questionable. Because if he's influenced, what does that mean? Because if you influence me and I have absolute powers to make a declaration or a ruling, then it means the other commissioners are basically vestigial. They don't have any particular role. Like their voice is not of importance, because their voice should be respected at all. I mean, it should be respected as well. Because in any decision, whether it's any judicial process or any justice form of process, there should be a level of agreement. If you have 5 people, at least 3 should agree. But you can't have 5 and only one is having his own reasoning, and the others have a dissenting voice, and then you don't respect the dissenting voice of the majority.
Before I take a break, I asked this question: what takes precedence, Wakili? I know you're going to support the other side. That's quite obvious. But what will prevail? What will prevail? The judge said because of the political horse trading, yes, but law is law. So it's now Speaker Moses Wetangula torn between. He's between a rock and a hard place.
You see, he doesn't have to, because Wetangula, lucky enough, is a lawyer.
Yes.
So he took an oath. He also, much as he took an oath to be a speaker of the parliament, he also took another oath to become a lawyer. So he has to be very religious to his first oath. So that he ensures that justice is done. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to have a situation where Parliament comes up with a law which, again, at the end of the day, we start questioning how did we end up with this law, and we start running to court to stop it, and wasting public resources, to say the least. Because sometimes some of these things is really an issue of Parliament feeling that they are superior. They say that they have the people who have they are the people with the mandate to make the law. But then the law has got to be has got to comply with the Constitution. If it does not comply, then that's not law. We will be dealing in a situation where we are using other things to govern ourselves. So it's important, and we are lucky he's a lawyer. He needs to put his political hat aside and be able to determine and be very fair and have the House come up with a law which is going to be restricted. Because truth be told, if they come up with anything less, we are still going to be in court over the same, and this process might be able to be fought through and through.
Basil something to do. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back. We're taking a look at what's in Parliament's in tray. They resume after that long recess. Of course, Mheshimiwa says that, there's nothing to celebrate about. They didn't have money. 20 million. That's a lot of money.
You look at the demand and supply. You have 20 million and you have over 24,000 needy cases.
That's a lot of money, Mheshimiwa.
If you divide that, it would be 200 shillings per person.
That's a lot of money. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Actually, 2,000, less than 2,000, basically.
Karibu. Today is World Radio Day, by the way. With my career started in radio as a vernacular, somewhere doing some vernacular radio station. I say I can speak my mother tongue pretty well. I can. Today is World Radio Day. Yes, we grew up listening to idhaa ya Kiswahili ya KBC Nairobi. Umuga Kabisae, Leonard Mambo Potela. We all know the legends. All right, we'll talk about that shortly. So this is it. Our sister stations. Today is World Radio Day. We're celebrating it across the world as journalists. So this is where we are. Okay, so coming back to what we should be expecting today. Mwesh, the whole process that is going to be taking place in Parliament today. Allow me to ask you this question, therefore, that we have several bills that's going to be tabled for debate, some for adoption, etc., etc. But when you look at the political horse trading that is going to be taking place in Parliament, who is going to stand, want to lose, to gain? And where does this leave the executive? Because we've seen a lot of litigations against the executive, to an extent that even the speaker himself is now forced to go to court to challenge a court decision. It's going to be a bit different this time around.
You see, and anyone who is listening to this conversation, it's not about the executive, it's not about the speaker, it's not about UDA MPs, it's about Kenyans. Any patriot who means well for the country would tell you what's going on with the housing levy is a scam. And I have a reason to call it a scam. One, is not a priority for Kenyans. Number two, the approach used by this, by the government on the affordable housing, where you are imposing taxes, you're actually imposing levy on all salaried Kenyans in the disguise that they are going to have houses. In principle, that is a total lie. Because if it's a mortgage program, you are told, or you go to an agreement with a mortgage provider who tells you this will be your house,
yes,
you'll pay for this period of time, and this is what you'll be paying every month, and you know within this particular period you'll occupy your house. Here you have a system whereby money is taxed or is deducted from your account or from your pay slip, and you don't know where the house is, and after the end of the day you'll be forced to go to your pocket again and buy the same house which was purported to be yours. So any person whose mind is working will tell you this is a scam. It's a fraudulent system, because it's unfortunate. If we really want to have affordable housing, there are better ways to achieve that. And as I've indicated, you remove taxes on construction materials. And any Kenyan, regardless of whether you are employed, formally or informally, you'll be able to afford the house you want, where you can go down and sit with the architect or any construction professional and agree on the kind of house you want, because you can be able to afford the ingredient needed for a house to be constructed. But here you have a levy, you are imposing on someone against his will. Let's take an example. Someone who is about to retire is still paying for the same levy. You have like 4 years or 1 year to retirement, and your pay slip shows a deduction of a levy. How will you have such a house within a year? And number two, when the house is completed, it is supposed to be sold to Kenyans. And the house is constructed on a Kenyan land, government land, not individual private. These are government land, and you are selling to Kenyans. If you talk of the hustlers who are supposed to have these affordable housing, because the plan all through was to give affordable housing to hustlers, because the reason affordable means cheap houses. So hustlers, how many of them can raise 2 million or 3 million to buy a house? So the whole thing is a total scam. And any person who means well for the country, we are talking of patriots, starting from the speaker and others, they should tell you, there's nothing like discussion there. Either in the bill we amend and say all construction materials should be free and no more levies, then there we can have a bill. But you can't come and just craft something to please a particular person. It's not about pleasing someone. Remember, we are elected for a period of time. There will be a time when someone else will be in power. And if you have decisions which are not resonating with Kenyans and you mess your country, then generations to come will blame you for what you did. So we don't want a situation whereby generations to come will blame leaders of today. So the president should be taking the lead and know that we have had other presidents. There will be also a time for others. And if he's out, and you can imagine future generations blaming, saying this particular time, we are where we are because of decisions that were taken in 2023 or 2024. So let's think as country, as patriots, and remember we have a generation to build. We have a future for our country. Our kids need to find a better country.
That reminds me of one day what Governor James Orengo one day said, that some of the laws that you're passing in this house will come back to haunt you at some point. Exactly what you've said. But Wakili, what do you see? Litigations after litigations? It's going to be a busy session.
Yes, it's going to be a very busy session, but we don't have to. I think I would want to back what Mheshimiwa is saying and say that, you know, we need an amalgam of how to approach this issue of housing. First, we need what he said, where we need to lower the cost of materials, and we zero rate actually some of them, because so that people can, across the country, can be able to build houses. Secondly, we do need low-cost housing, which has got to be spearheaded for the poor. These houses are in other countries, they're actually built by whatever, either by actually councils, county councils, or the county government, so that those people who are poor, who are homeless, they are given houses for free, not to be sold to them. And then we also need to also look at the aspect of having a very clear framework in terms of how we are going to, if we are going to use Kenyans' money. It doesn't make sense, Victor, you tell me that I contribute to build a house for hustlers, and then when that house is going to be built on government land, without title, which is not going to be bought, and then you tell someone else, you build, once you build, we will give you money, you give them my money, and then you sell the house to the hustler, and then I get nothing. I mean, you have robbed me. You have robbed me already, so that's not even a tax, that's robbery. Because tax needs representation. You need to account for my money. So how do you account for the money you've taken from me? That is where the challenge is, and that's likely to bring legal issues. That's why I said we need a lot of wisdom for Parliament to come up with an amalgam of an act which addresses housing in various approaches, which caters for the needs of Kenyans, for the high end, for the middle, and for the low end. where the low end get houses for free, where the middle can be able to access houses where if they want to build, they build at low cost, at low amounts, because the materials will be either zero rated or the taxes will be reduced, and where the high end, of course, have the means to make whichever house they want to make, so that everybody, there's equity across the structures of the Kenyan population.
I want us to take a look at this. The issue of IBC. It's part of, packed entry for Parliament as you resume. Perhaps this is going to be the make or break point of forming the IBC and reconstitute it fully. The selection panel, the court said that the selection panel should continue as it was. We have a negotiation from the NADCO report, Mheshimiwa, and now part of it is going to be adopted for deliberation. But then now the question is, how is it going to be? The selection panel will be as good as the commissioners. Azimio and Kenya Kwanza reached some kind of, some level of understanding. So what is going to happening in Parliament this time around? The limitation of boundaries also here in March. Time is not there with us. So what's going to happen between now and the moment you'll come up with some kind of equilibrium point?
We are reaching a point where our constitution is being tested because we have few weeks to the lapse of the period that we are given to have the boundaries review. And here we don't have commissioners. We have not even been able to agree because all political parties need to have a voice in the selection of the IBC commissioners. And as I indicated earlier in my remarks, we need to make amendment to this IBC so that within the law, we don't get to the situation we are in now. Because you can imagine, without commissioners, the whole IBC is not working now. There's nothing they are doing, basically. They can't issue new voters card. They can't oversee elections, even for wards, for MCS. So that is a crisis we are in. And to avert such a crisis in the future, we need to make amendments. Now, with the period we are left with being too short, there is a lot to be done by members of Parliament. And I'm seeing a situation where we may not even actualize what is expected of us. Because remember, we have a lot in store, and the other priorities, competing priorities in Parliament. I've already given an example of NGCDCF, which is one of the top priorities. Considering we have 4 months to the end of the financial year, and Kenyans want to see results of their taxes. They want to see projects being implemented. Because remember, they pay taxes. There is so much being levied on them, but there's not reciprocal or commensurate to what's happening on the ground. So if you remember the slogan that the late President Kibaki used to say, when he used to say, kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. By that he meant, you pay taxes, but you see results of your taxes. Here in Kenya, now we are paying more taxes, but there is nothing to see for the taxes. We are only told we are paying debts. How would you overtax your people to repay debts? On the other side, you have seen government doing a renovation of state house or state lodges. Are you telling me President Uhuru was staying in a leaking state house? The answer is no. Because you see, if you overtax Kenyans, you need to invest this money in projects that are visible and that resonate with the wishes of Kenyans. And that will motivate people to pay more taxes. But if you pay taxes and I don't see results, I don't see any tarmac roads in my constituency. I don't see any meaningful project in my constituency. What will incentivize me to continue paying for taxes? So for us to pay taxes as citizens, it must be rhyming with the results, where I see action being taken by government, which reflect my desires as a citizen, as a patriot, and as a Kenyan. But if you are taking money from me, and you are telling me you want to offset Eurobond, at the same time I'm seeing renovation in State House, then that doesn't motivate people, because it tells, yes, you need to renovate, but is it a priority now? Now, it's not. Why could you not start with what will make Kenyans at least have some relief from the money they are paying? Because as I've told you, cost of living today is above the roof. Us as legislators, we are feeling it. What about a common man? You know, they are really struggling.
But as a member of parliament, are you afraid of the repercussion that might befell parliament or even you, now that we don't have enough time to have the commissioners in place and, you know, IBC fully instituted so that we can have, you know, the limitation of boundaries to take place?
Sometimes I think some of these things should be postponed. Because when you are in a crisis like now, there's a point where you say, is it a matter of life and death? Because if you look at what is a priority to many Kenyans, it's not, I don't think it's the boundaries. What is a priority for them is a cost of living, where they should exist and feel we are part of this country. But today, most of the Kenyans, even those at the border, I'm sure they are considering moving to the neighboring countries. It will be shocking if you go to the border areas. You go to Namanga, or you go to Isibania, or you go to Malaba, you'll find many Kenyans opting to go to the neighboring country and even stay and shop there. So when you reach a point where someone feels, I better go to the neighboring country, that's not a good signal. And it is a point where Kenyans lose that spirit of patriotism. You can only be a patriot when you see results and when you feel you are appreciated by your country.
Wakili, what do you see?
Just to start from where he has finished, I think the sense of patriotism is lost even in the nationhood, because we are being told now Kenyans, the president goes out there to look for jobs for Kenyans. Kenyans have been educated using Kenyans' money, but we're going to benefit another economy to make more money and then send whatever remains of what you make there back to the country, because we have a deficit for dollars. So we have to, our strategy is to take Kenyans away so that they can send the money home. So the diaspora is being targeted for 1 trillion. I mean, it's a good thing, but then no country has developed by depending on their diaspora. We need to make very clear decisions and be able to forge a way which we can be able to help Kenyans internally. And I think that's what Kibaki's strategy was, that we cannot be able to export Kenyans and expect that they send money home so that we use the money to develop. It never works. We saw the president give a very interesting speech in terms of what Japan is taxing its people at 35%. But I think what is lost in that discussion is the aspect that, you know, when you tax people so much, then the services have got to be commensurate. Even the 15% he claims that we are being taxed, we don't see any commensurate services. Because right now, I think the media has been able to cover enough the service provision to Kenyans in terms of government service providers. They are really on their low end. We need to ensure that there is compliance in issuing Kenyans basic services. The issue of the IDs is not being issued. Passports cannot be able to be issued.
What is the legal implication if that time, you know, elapses? Because the deadline that 8 to 12 years elapses, and yet we don't have IBC in place. So what's the legal implication to that?
The legal implication is that we'll be able to jump into a constitutional crisis, which we don't have to, because we need to have that in place. There's really no major reason as well we should not be able to be having a commissioners in place as we speak. So we need to ensure, we need to have Parliament move with speed, and as the first order of business, ensure that we have commissioners. They get to put the structures in place.
So we have a crisis. So we'll be directly answerable to that. Parliament. Who?
It's the Parliament and the executive always. The executive and Parliament. No one else. The buck stops with the executive and Parliament, because that is where the decisions are made. So failure to which, then you put Kenyans in a constitutional quandary where we don't have to be. So this situation has got to be midwifed anyway. This is a political situation which has got to be. The only problem we have is a political issue. If we can be able to solve the political issue, the legal issue of coming up with the people who are going to be in office is not going to be a big problem. So the problem is really political. And the politics is where Mheshimiwa sits.
Some of these things should be postponed.
You see, he's already saying we postpone. We shouldn't. We need to deal with them now and then finish with them as we move forward, because it goes to our core nationhood. If we start suspending some constitutional provisions as a matter of wish, then what country are we going to be? I mean, sometimes you will be like, we don't have money, kids shouldn't go to school.
Yes.
So if there is no money for a year, there will be no schooling. If you don't have money, do people stop getting sick? Okay. So there's some things that are really very urgent which need to be done. And we just need to ask so much from government and from the executive and parliament, because these are the two arms which are really failing us.
What is the biggest problem with IBC? If court said the selection panel to continue and get new commissioners, what's the opposition's biggest problem with that?
I don't think oppositions have any problem. It's only that it has to be an inclusive exercise. All political parties have a duty to nominate persons to be part of the commissioners. Because remember, these will be referees for the 2027 elections. And any player would want fairness in any match. So if you have commissioners, they should represent views and interests of the parties involved. I'm talking of parties, political parties, that will be participating in 2027 elections. So that panel should be an exhaustive and an inclusive panel that reflects and meets the minimum threshold and the wishes of all political parties or stakeholders. So it's not about opposition. It's about inclusivity that is needed to ensure there is fairness and there is trust in the body or in the IBC commission, and so that will be selected.
And so how will it change the entire problem that has bedeviled IBC in the past? We've had this for the longest years.
If you remember what I said here, this is the highest time for us as legislators to make amendment to the IBC Act or the IBC policy as provided for in the Constitution. It is unfortunate to have one person with absolute power to make a declaration or a ruling when he's not in agreement with the other commissioners. So if we have commissioners, their job is not just to be rubber stamps. They have a duty to have their voice heard. And that's why I'm saying we need to make amendment and say, if at least this number of commissioners do not agree, then what should be taken? Either we go back to a fresh election, or we call for a fresh tallying, which is open, transparent for all Kenyans to see. Otherwise, it's very unfortunate to have one person making a ruling when the rest of his colleagues are disagreeing with him or with her. So this is a situation which we don't want to go back to. Because remember, what's the point of having commissioners who have no voice, whose voice cannot be respected? That is an irony. Because if we are all panelists here, our voices should be factored, should be respected, and if we disagree with the chair of our panel, then there should be a way forward. And a way forward could be either we call for tallying of the results in an open way for everyone to have a consensus and say, look, this is how it is. Even Kenyans are witnessing.
In 3 seconds.
But that is not what we saw in 2022. So we don't want a repeat. Because remember, we want a united Kenyan. The presidency is a symbol of unity. And the moment Kenyans lose trust with that symbol of unity, what does that mean? It means fragments. Like what you have seen function in Somalia. Remember, Somalia is a failed state because the president there is not taken as a symbol of unity. I'm talking as someone who worked in Somalia for 5 years. So I know what I'm talking about. And I wanted to take a point on what he said. The issue of exporting workers to go and develop economies of other nations is a very retrogressive approach.
What should you expect in Parliament?
What we need to, no, I'm talking on the point he mentioned,
go ahead.
Where the president is taking lead to go and negotiate for Kenyans to go and work elsewhere. The spirit of any nation is for citizens to develop their country. Remember, we have investors who have built houses here. If we export all the workforce to go and work elsewhere, who will be the people renting these houses? That's how you kill your economy. If you talk of remittance, Somalia, half of the Somali citizens, they are working in other countries. But the money they are remitting in form of foreign exchange is not developing Somalia. So you cannot tell us that Kenyans who are going to work abroad will send us money to be able to develop our country. If you are in any country, remember you are spending there, you are eating every day, you are sleeping, You are going to hospitals. You are paying taxes in that country. Are you not developing that country?
Okay.
At the expense of your nation? If you ask any country in the whole world, I've worked in many countries myself when I used to work with the United Nations. So I'm speaking on a point of reality and point of information. We cannot be promoting, exporting our workers elsewhere. We should create jobs right here in Kenya. Remember, we are also perpetuating modern slavery. If you send your workers to go and work elsewhere, you are taking your workers as slaves in that country. They will not be respected. If we invest in production, generate employment right here home, the country will grow. But if you send workers thinking the amount of money you get as remittance will be enough to meet or to bridge the gap in terms of what you have lost when your citizens are not there,
okay.
I'm telling you that's a lie. And the people will remember what I've said.
Yes.
We export workers, our GDP will even go down.
All right. So
and I've given you a good example. People are focusing more on the dollar. I've given you a reference to the local, the neighboring countries. Remember, Kenya was a powerhouse, economic powerhouse in East Africa. We are losing that glory. And it's very unfortunate. I'm speaking as a party, not as an Azimio member. I'm speaking as a Kenyan who understands that this country deserves more.
Absolutely.
And we have kids who would want to come and find a better Kenya.
We are running out of time. So in 5 seconds, what should you expect? From here, I know you're heading to Parliament. What should you expect?
Well, you just watch, because as I've said,
that sounds like
we will be there to ensure the
like
people who elected us, their views are represented.
Yes.
Because I've said there is more. It's not about which party you elected, but it's about the interests of Kenyans.
From here, I can see Senate has 31 pending bills. 31 pending bills await Senate sitting resume. So
Parliament has more than that, I think.
Parliament has more than that. I don't know whether you have order paper or...
I have the order paper, but what has been put here, remember, what comes as order paper is discussed by the Housing Committee. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes the Housing Committee might be skewed. All right.
Wakili,
it's not necessarily what they bring is what we want to see
I can see order, I can see member. Can you go out? Set it at times. I can foresee that. A lot of that. Wakili, tumalizie, we are running out of time.
Thank you. I think I would want to say that this is a very interesting thing for Kenya, and this particular session is going to be very important, given that they are going to debate the major things which are going to affect Kenyans in the future. So we expect that all members of parliament are armed with the spirit of Mheshimiwa.
I can see member of Yatta.
We need that energy in parliament. Let's hope they will not be going behind the doors and then the spirit disappears. So we wish that all the best for members of parliament to be able to shepherd a clear process, which is not going to be bound with litigation in the process. So once we do that, then we will be able to live a country which we are proud of.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we'll be back here to discuss more when time allows. So we are streaming live. This is on our page. That is Wakili Gisore. You are very serious. We are streaming live there. You can take a look.
These are serious issues of the nation.
Serious issues. You can also to KBC Live and check what's happening. Yours truly there. And of course, yes, yours truly, today is World Radio Day, but most important today, I want to leave you with one quote here. That sometimes even a bad man fears a drunkard. Today is World Radio Day. We are crossing over to Radio Taifa. We're having former governor, that is Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya.